I welcome you everyone this evening, and we are going on a journey of asking questions. So please be comfortable to ask me any question. I have about 4,000 questions here. I will try to start answering them one after the other as long as we can. But I want you to know that questions are important in life, Jesus sat at the feet of the elders and he was asking questions. I normally say that if you don't learn how to ask questions, one day you become a question mark. In my adage, they said that if you want to know the road, you ask people that are on the road so that you will not be lost. A lot of people are lost in life because they don't ask questions. Some people don't even have they don't think there's a need or it's necessary for them to ask questions. And if you don't ask questions, you won't even know what to do. There are so many things that are bothering people's mind. I was reading a lot of them today and it's like, wow. And these are questions that could be answered just like that, and you get your liberty. Even Peter, the extrovert, was asking Jesus questions. He asked him, now that we have left everything, what's going to happen? Are we going to be starving till we die? Jesus said, no, you can't leave everything, your father, your mother, your business and everything, and follow me. You will have your reward here and also in the world to come. So, how do we now know that when you follow Jesus now better? You know what I'm saying? I appreciate everyone for listening to me. This evening is going to be powerful, it's going to be wonderful, it's going to be explosive, and I'm trusting that we're going to have a good time. Today is another day. Let me take the first question. Please, ma, how can I know if my husband and I are compatible? And what can I do? Let me take the compatibility one. Now, when you are in a relationship and you begin to have stress from the inception of your relationship, you are not restful. There's always one thing or the other. You forgive today, you keep malice tomorrow, you don't want to continue next tomorrow. You've told each other, I'm done 500 times in a year's courtship. There's something is wrong with that relationship. There are red flags, there are black flags. There are signs that something fundamental is wrong in that relationship. The moment you cannot flow for at least friends, you have friends, I have friends. We can be together for maybe 2 years, or maybe let's say 1 year, or 6 months, or 8 months, and there will be no conflict that would make us to say, I'm done. The moment you are in a relationship and before Jack, I'm done, I'm no more interested, you can't sleep, you can't rest, your spirit is ruffled, you are not settled, is a sign that you are not compatible. Now, another sign that you are not compatible is when you notice some things that the person is doing that is wrong, and it's so difficult for you to confront the person, because the moment you do any form of confrontation, it's going to be a fight. It's going to just pick up a conflict. You are going to fight, and so you are afraid to say, this thing you did the other time, I'm not comfortable about it. Now, there's a way you communicate. Maybe we'll talk about communication later. Anybody that loves you will respect your feelings. If the person you are relating with does not respect your feelings, now if you say, I felt bad the way you drove the other time, my heart is almost coming out of my mouth, and the person says, so that's the way I drive, if you don't want to come, if you don't want to stay in this car, you can get out of the car, then there's a problem. If the person you are relating with does not feel you, does not respect your feelings, does not appreciate when you are in distress about the relationship, then something is wrong somewhere. Those are the signs of incompatibility. Now, if you want to go scientific, it's perfect. As a matter of fact, when we do compatibility tests, it's like you are watching, you went to see a prophet that is hot, you know what I mean, that will download you and show you where you guys are not compatible. It's extremely important if you can just play safe. Now, maybe you've made a lot of commitment to each other, the person has spent all his life sending you to school, or you've invested so much in that relationship, and you felt, no, I don't want to, say now that we're not compatible, it's going to be difficult for us to break and all of that. I would suggest you guys to do compatibility assessment test. Now, when you do that test, I've done it for people We do it in our foundation, Mending Lives therapy sessions. And guess what? Some of them, when the result comes out and they know that they are not compatible, they work on their relationship and they are still married. So incompatibility does not make you, compatibility test or not being compatible does not make you to separate or leave each other. The best thing you can do for yourself is to just make a decision to, okay, now I know we're not compatible in this area. You nag, I nag, you shout, I shout, you get angry, I get angry, you misbehave, I misbehave. Kind of personality clash. Then you know what to do. You know how to manage yourselves. You know how to now do couples therapy if you are married. And if you're going to get married, honestly, if you note, if in your compatibility, I mean the scientific compatibility test proves that you guys are really, really having frictions, the clashes is much more than anything. Instead of you getting into that relationship and now begin to have serious issues. Now, don't forget, the moment people get married, the next thing they are looking for is to have children. Now, when kids come into that relationship and you are still battling with incompatibility, there's going to be a problem. You're going to wound those children before you now come back to know that this and these are the things that is causing these frictions. So the best thing, if you are not married and you've done your compatibility assessment test, which is scientifically done by professionals, the moment that is done and you just notice that this thing is becoming too stressful and it's going to transfer to your children, the best thing is for you to quit that relationship. A broken courtship is better than a broken marriage. A broken courtship is better than a broken destiny. A broken courtship is better than a broken focus. Because the moment you are into that relationship and your focus is broken, your vision, your mandate, your assignment is being truncated, you cannot really feel fulfilled because you are married to a man that, or a woman that you are not compatible with. The best bet is for you to quit. Now, if you are married, you are into that marriage, you're already there, you've been having children, and you've been having serious conflicts. If you do your compatibility assessment test, it does not mean you should separate. If both of you are willing to make it work, we are going to help you guys doing couples therapy, getting a solid, consistent counselor, somebody you can run issues with before you make decisions. Maybe you feel like cutting somebody's head, you feel like shouting, you feel like yelling, you feel like, getting angry about a particular episode in your relationship. You can always call your counselor, your accountability person, to help you to resolve it. Before you know it, you will blend and there's going to be a synergy. But if that is not the case, and you just find out that you cannot really flow together, please, you need therapy. You can do couples therapy and you'll be fine. Now, when it comes to divorce, as it were, if you have not put effort in your relationship, please, the next option is not getting out of the marriage. Now, you can separate if there is violence, if there is any form of neglect or abuse, we could actually separate. But when it comes to, or infidelity is involved, if the word of God is clear, if in your marriage of maybe 10 years, you are counting like 20 different women with proofs and evidences that your husband is acting out or your wife is acting out, based on that, you can actually separate. But the point is that if the two of you you are both ready to make the relationship work, you are both ready to put effort and heal from the wound of betrayal and all of that, the marriage can still come together and you can really be a wounded healer. You become a couple that would help others to be free and to teach people on how to manage their marriage without infidelity. You can actually heal completely after there's an affair in the relationship, as long as the other party is ready and is willing to sacrifice, to pay the price and paying the price and do whatever it is to make sure that relationship works. But if it's not working, if the relationship is not going to work, oh God, we're having a network issue here. I don't know what to do here now. If you are listening to me, if you are hearing me, let me know. Okay, we are back. I don't want to cut it off. I don't want to break that communication. So the next question the person asks is, what can I do for a man that is womanizing No name, no face, no identity. Womanizing. It's taking me on a journey this evening, and that's the journey of understanding the dynamics of addiction. And I'm going to focus on sexual addiction. When you notice that your spouse, now this is just a woman asking a question. I've seen men that have had proofs and evidences of their wives' unfaithfulness in marriage. So when it comes to womanizing or manizing, there's no English like manizing, I'm just saying my own. You understand? You know, when it comes to that, it's deeper than the act. It's deeper than the action or whatever you are seeing or the action or whatever your spouse is displaying. Is deeper than that. We are talking about a mental issue here. We're talking about a psychological issue here. We're also talking about spiritual issues here, because it could be so spiritual. I tell people, I say, sex is not a contract, it's a covenant. The moment you expose your body to another man or another woman that is not your wife, that is not your husband, you are entering a soul tie. You are entering a soulish covenant. You are entering a covenant. Let me put it that way. Because when you have sex with a woman, what happens is that blood comes out. Now, your spermatozoa is blood related. At least it was sex that gave birth to all of us that we are here today. Nobody came to this world without a man and a woman having sex. Even Jesus was, the mother of Jesus was pregnated by the Holy Spirit. There must be a consummation. Something happened that transpired between a man and a woman that makes a child to come. So when you're having sex with a woman or a man that is not your husband, you are entering into a blood covenant with that person. Now, if you enter a covenant with someone, you have a part to pay. The person that you are covenanted with also has a part to play. Now, when those parts are played, you become one. That's why the Bible says, he that is joined to an harlot is into one spirit. So you join your spirit to another person's spirit. So if you are not careful, definitely not being careful or being careful, you can't even, if you are careful, you won't have infidelity, you won't have to sleep with another man or another woman that is not your husband or your wife. But if that comes into the picture, it could really get into serious spiritual problem. Because I've seen a lot of people having sex with someone that is not their husband and is not their wife, and till their grave they became caged. They were actually handcuffed. They were caged. They were in a snare of the person they are having sex with. But now let's go to the foundation of womanizing or manizing or having extramarital relationship. The root has to do with, number one, your first sexual exposure. Most of it, there are 3 inlets to sexual struggle. Your first sexual exposure determines a lot. That's why I've been passionate about talking about being sex wise as parents. You have to be careful. If you allow yourself, your eyes, which is the window to your soul and to your spirit, get exposed to pornography, maybe you were raped, maybe there's a type of molestation, or somebody took advantage of you, whatever, or you were anything that happened that gave you an inlet to sexuality before your time, is a time bomb, is a tickling bomb, is an explosive bomb, because your soul has been caged. That is one inlet. First sexual exposure or expose you to all sorts of sexual perversion or activities. I hope I'm making sense here. Then the second inlet is trauma. There are people that are sexually addicted today because they saw their mom fight their dad. They are from a dysfunctional home. Their parents don't understand them. They have so much, pain sitting in their soul. Now, what is addiction? Addiction is a way you medicate a pain that is in your soul. It's like you have malaria, you take anti-malaria, or you treat yourself for malaria, or you have headache, you take analgesic. That's exactly what it is when your soul is wounded. Now, the inlet which I'm talking about is when there's a wound in the soul. Probably you failed. A lot of people have to trace the root of their sexuality, because this is a woman now asking question. What do you do to a man that humanizes? The question is not just the humanizing. It's like, when you are having malaria, then you're having temperature. The temperature is a symptom of what is already seated in your subconscious. So the moment you've noticed that something happened to you, maybe you failed an examination, maybe you were rejected, maybe your parents or your guardians, they are not sensitive to you, they don't know what trips you, they don't know what gets to you. You go back to your shell, you go inside, and you are feeling bad. The more you feel bad, the more you want to use something to numb the feelings, to medicate that feelings that is inside you. The things that, please, can you share with people watching on Facebook, on YouTube? Can you just share on Instagram? Please tell people to listen to this, because I've had cases, many couples talking about this womanizing, this my wife is committing adultery. There's so much, and people don't know what is the root of this. Now you're wondering, a man that told you I love you, you are this, you are that, even went to the court or went to church to make a commitment and gave you a wedding ring, and before you know it, the man is acting out. You don't look at the symptoms, look at the root of what has happened, and that is what we're talking about now. We're answering a question here. Now, when the moment you notice that maybe something happened that makes you unhappy, that is another inlet. Trauma-based addict. You are traumatized. Maybe your parent died, or there's an accident, or you were told to repeat and they didn't manage that failure properly, and they are mocking you, making jest of you, saying things about you, or telling you are not responsible, or verbally abuse you. This wound, this trauma could be verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse. Now, that is another inlet to any form of sexual struggle. So having to understand that your husband or your wife is not just committing adultery, there's a door that opens, and when the door opens, it leads to other doors. That's why I said the first inlet is wrong exposure to sex. Second inlet is sexual struggle is trauma, any form of trauma. Now, like I always tell people, we react to pain differently. Some, if anything happens, they cry, they yell, they throw tantrums, react carelessly and verbally, and scatter everywhere, and they are calm. Some will be quiet, they won't say anything, they'll just keep quiet, but that silence is something else. That silence is trouble. Some will just be shedding tears, they are not saying anything, but they're just crying. Some will be sweating profusely. So many things happened when we are traumatized. Now, because we don't respect professionals on this side of life, can I say this to all our listeners today? Please seek help. I'm happy this person is asking this question. Seek help. If somebody dies, don't assume the person will get over it overnight. People don't get over emotional wounds overnight. Maybe like this woman that her husband is womanizing, she cannot recover from the pain of being betrayed just like that. There must be an intervention. Somebody must come into the picture to assist you to deal with the issues that happened, to help you to have feelings, touch with your feelings. Some people just said, one woman said, I felt I'm dying now. I want to kill someone. I feel numb. My husband has traveled. I can't call my husband. So many things that you feel. It takes the help of a professional to help you to trace that root, your feelings, to validate your pain, your feelings, whatever it is that has happened or is happening to you, to put a signature on it and say, okay, this is it, this is how to come out of it, this is what to do, this is what not to do. The moment you are able to do that, you are going to be okay. But trauma leads to a form of addiction. It's like a pain or a wound that is not healed. Definitely it's going to be decaying. When you have a wound, whether soulish wound or physical wound, it has to be healed and properly healed. And let me give you a practical example of wounds that looks healed and is not healed. Now, some that their husband has committed adultery for years, some their wife has slept around for years, they will act as if nothing is wrong. No hassles. But it's not true. When they are getting married to another person, that is the time they will know and say, wow, I thought this thing was gone. I did not know it was still sitting somewhere. And that's why when you are traumatized, deal with your trauma. Don't take it for granted. Get a professional help. Some people are concerned, I have to pay. Yes, you have to pay. You know why you have to pay? If you go to the hospital, you are sick physically, you have to pay for the treatment, or else you're not going to be healed, or else you're not going to be okay, or else you're going to die. That sickness can kill. And emotional wounds kills than physical wounds. People don't know. We have so many people walking on the street, walking with their jackets and their coats on, and they are mentally ill. A little touch is like exploding or releasing a volcano or a bomb, because the sickness is not yet addressed. The sickness is there. Now let me explain it a little more. Now, if you have been traumatized for a very, I'm still talking about the inlet. I said trauma. Maybe you have been traumatized for a very long time. Some things happened, and nothing is done to it. People say time heals. Please don't say that again. Don't ever say time heals. Time does not heal. It just suppresses, represses, and numb the memories. When anything happens that looks like that episode, something will show up. Something will happen. I'll give you some strong testimonies of people that have tried to repress their pain, their trauma, and today I would explain. I mean, you can go back on my episodes on She Matters on Fresh FM. I actually brought her to the program, and she said she did not know that her past traveled with her to her future. I'm going to give that example, but don't let me lose my track on this. Now, not being healed from trauma is so simple. You have a wound. I'm sure some of us have had wounds on our bodies before, and after some time there's a patches that looks as if the wound is healed. It happens a lot to everyone that expose yourself to knife or something, or any form of bruises. Now, if you are not careful, after some time it will look as if there's no wound again. But if you scratch that place, sometimes we have fresh blood coming out of that particular place that looks healed, as if the wound is fresh. That is what it means when you are traumatized and you cover it up as if nothing has happened, because you don't want people to see you as weak. You better be vulnerable. You can be weak before anybody. It doesn't really matter. If I'm weak and I make myself vulnerable to you, and that's why you need a professional. People that will keep your secrets, people that will cover your shame, people that will not see you as, oh, look at him, he committed adultery, look at her, she fornicated, look at him, he's having nightmares, look at him. No. A professional will not judge you. They will help you. Now, I've told you about the first inlet. The first inlet is simple. You can ask your question while the program is going on. You can write it on the screen. I can always answer that. But today I'm answering the question of a woman that talked about compatibility, and also that the husband is womanizing. Now, another inlet that is extremely sensitive, extremely important, is the third one I want to talk about, and that is the pattern of the bloodline. If you are raised from a polygamous home, your father had several women, hear me and hear me clearly, you are vulnerable. By the reason of your bloodline, you can actually start sleeping around without you being conscious of it. Please note it, and I will explain myself thoroughly today. If this is all I will do today, I'll be fine with it. Now, if your mom had 4 of you for 4 different men, or your mother had a record of infidelity from your mother to your grandmother to your great grandmother, lo and behold, you are 1,000,000% vulnerable. You are likely to commit adultery. You are likely to commit fornication. You are likely to have extramarital relationship. You are likely to humanize. Why? Because of your bloodline. Let's travel into the scriptures, coming from faith angle. Now, you are not limited to faith. Please don't think, oh, this person Yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm a Christian counselor. I'm a Christian counselor. But you know what? When it comes to therapy and Christianity, every soul needs help. So don't be limited to religion. I've handled people that are staunch Muslims, and today they are happy. It's a professional job. It has nothing to do with religion. Now, what religion does is it reinforces you. I've seen Muslims that have helped in therapy, and they went into serious prayers in their praying method, and today they are fine. So I'm not limiting you to religion. Please don't say, oh, I'm not a Christian, how do I go about this? Help is always available. I will limit you to your religion and you are going to be fine. And that's the truth. Now let's come back to the bloodline from the scriptures. Abraham came from a very dysfunctional home. A dysfunctional home where there is idolatry. When you see a system that is dysfunctional, maybe the man is the head of a clan and he had like 7 wives. When you see an idol worshiper, definitely adultery is close to idol worshiping, because there's no way you will worship an idol in a way that idolatry or adultery will not be involved. Women are also always involved in any form of worship and sacrifice. Recently I didn't know what I was looking for. I just stumbled at Fela's shrine. It was an old video they put up there, and wow, so many women, and it says it's in a shrine. So we are looking at a shrine, we are looking at idolatry, and we are looking at women. Now that was Abraham, and when God was going to help Abraham, he had an encounter with God, and God told him, leave everything, leave your kindred, leave your family, come over. So you can always agree with me that Abraham was born again in the content of the New Testament, meaning that he was pulled out of where he was, the family of idolatry. Now I'm talking about the pattern of the bloodline. Please follow me. This is extremely important. It will help you to be free. It will help you to understand the dynamics of infidelity, adultery, and everything. And it will help you to stand out and stand up, because there are people even in the Old Testament that stood up against infidelity, stood up against adultery, and they made up their minds to live in the Old Testament as if they are living in the New Testament. So it's not a liberty for adultery because you came from a pattern of the bloodline that was, that had questionable background of adultery or idolatry, or you are traumatized, or you are wrongly exposed to sex. It's a decision you have to make. It's a choice that you make to get yourself out of that mess and become a person that is clean and safe. And people will look at you and say, wow, this person, despite the fact that he or she came from a background, her background is not putting his back on the ground. Her background is not affecting him. It's a choice and a decision that has to be made. So I'm not giving you liberty for infidelity, liberty for adultery, because I'm bringing this exposition. Now, Abraham was so blessed. He came out, his wife followed him, and his cousin Lot followed him. They had a good time coming to that side. And because of the covenant, there was a blessing that was flowing. Abraham was so blessed, but something went wrong. I said something about trauma the other time. Abraham began to feel traumatized for not having children. When people give birth to their kids, when everybody is doing naming, he's asking himself, I'm so rich, I'm so wealthy, there's so much to me, but who is going to take over from me? Who is going to take all my inheritance? I have so much. And he began to worry. Genesis 14, 15, 16. He was worried. He will go to God and God will tell him, don't worry. Tell the stars, count the sands. You're going to have children that are plenty. But he was not finding it funny. He will cry, he will ask God, he will do everything. I'm sure most of the time he will not eat. And his wife was noticing all of this. It was just not peaceful. And one day, I'm talking about the pattern of the bloodline. One day, his wife just said, my dear, since we have this small girl in our house, our housemaid, why can't you just go into her if peradventure I will have my own child because of her? And I began to ask questions. Maybe you will answer it with me. You have so much wealth, and the promises of God to you, they are yea, they are amen. You were very sure that it was God has promised you. I don't think he needed to compromise. I don't think he needed to agree to his wife to have something to do with a guy, the girl at home. Now, what reared his ugly head is the pattern of the bloodline. That adultery in the family of Abraham showed up, and he could not resist the temptation. He could not say, no, honey, I've been waiting on the Lord for different from 14, 15, 16, 17 till 18. God was assuring Abraham that he was going to have a child. It's not even just one, nations are in his womb. He never realized that the pattern of the bloodline, what came from his parents, just is still sitting somewhere in his emotions, and he slept with Hagar. And as soon as that happens, the lady got pregnant. Now, that shows you that if your parents, if you are from a dysfunctional home, and your parents, any of your parents had a record of infidelity or adultery, just know that these are the things you should watch out for. If you're single and you are listening to me, if you are married, you have to watch it, because I don't want to use the word altar, but the pattern, the family system where you came from is an inlet to whatever it is that has to do with infidelity. You will agree with me that there are so many people that would say, oh, I'm a Christian. I mean, I've seen a lot of pastors that, they send their naked picture to a girl, they hang out with girls in different brothels, and they are committed Christians. Now, let me digress here a little bit. When you are born again, I'm not talking about being religious, I'm talking about you are giving your life to Christ. We are tripartite being. You have a spirit, you have a soul, you live in a body. The moment you are born again, is your spirit that is born again. Your soul and your body is not born again. Now, your soul is the seat of trauma. Your soul is the seat of the pattern of the family system. Your soul is the seat of education, knowledge. I've seen doctors that smoked like chimney, and they know it's written at the back of the pack of cigarettes that smokers are liable to die young, and they still smoke. They know. I've seen doctors that do abortion for people on the table without using condom protection. Now, why? They know. But because of where they're coming from, because of the pattern of their family system, they find themselves just like that. Now, their soul is a seat of information that knows that you are not supposed to commit adultery. You are not, by your profession, you should not smoke. By your profession, you should not sleep around. And yet they do. Why? Because the seat of your soul. Know what that David said, it makes me to lie down and it restores my soul. The seat of your soul is the place where you have all these things. Now, the body is an outlet. Your body is an outlet. Now, your spirit is saved, is intact. Now, that's why, when my kids were growing up, they were asking me questions. Mommy, can you be born again twice? I'm sure they were having their teenager struggle and everything. Mommy, can you be born again twice? Can you be born again? I tell them, no. I've given back to you. Yes, I've given back to you. You are born, you are born. Now, you can be born and be a dwarf. You can be born and be malnutrited. You can be born and be kwashiorkor. You can be born and be sickly. You are born, you are living, but you are not growing like the normal child. So if your spirit, when your spirit is born again, it can be choked up. The wounds in your soul can choke up your spirit man, can snuff life out of your spirit man. And that's why Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 5:23, he said, I pray that your spirit, your soul, and your body be preserved blameless unto the coming of the Lord. It is the body that is the outlet. It's the one that bring that you don't use. Spirit does not commit adultery. Soul does not commit adultery. It is body that commits adultery. But what is seated in the soul, what is seated in the soul is what is coming out in the act of adultery or anger or rage. These were wounds in the soul. Now, because I'm zeroing it on adultery today and addiction, that's why I don't want to talk about other vices like anger, like pride, like other things. So don't let me, I just want to focus on the act of my husband is womanizing. Now, in that soul, that is where you need to go through recovery. Now, what happened to Abraham? Abraham was spiritually connected to God, but his soul came, the baggages from the family system, then his soul was traumatized. So we'll look at Abraham as having two inlets to sexual struggle. And that was how Ishmael came. And you know the whole story. Now, Isaac, let's go to Isaac because I'm tracing the pattern now. You were wondering what was wrong with Isaac. Why did Isaac have issues with Rebekah? Why did Isaac have issues with Rebekah? It happens because something went wrong. Something went wrong. Rebekah was from a dysfunctional home. Isaac was also from a dysfunctional home. I'm talking about the inlet to sexual struggle. Let's look at it this way. Trauma, pattern of the bloodline, and of course, first wrong exposure to sex. Now, let me give you an example of Isaac. Now, when Isaac came to the family of Abraham and Sarah, they were fighting. Isaac and Ishmael were fighting. When you are from a home that there is a consistent conflict and nobody is resolving that conflict in a good way, they have sibling rivalry, you show favoritism, you are not balancing, and they are using the junior one to beat the senior one, or using the senior one against the junior one, and everybody just pitch different tents. You are killing something in that child. Now, when Isaac and Ishmael were fighting, Sarah went to her husband and said, my dear, this boy is a bastard. He's a son of a bondwoman. He's fighting my son. Let him go. And Abraham was saying, what? He's my firstborn. I can't let him go. And he said, well, now I've made a mistake once. Let me go back to God and ask God. And God told him, let that child go. And the mom. Now, the fight, the conflict between Isaac and Ishmael was somewhere. Don't forget the trauma. Isaac has been traumatized in that conflict. Despite the fact that he was a covenant child, I will show you how it happens later. Some of us, you don't know, because when you are emotionally sick, X-ray does not see it. It is what you are doing, it's the life you are living, it's the way you disseminate information to the world. Okay, let me not use information now. The way you react to things, the way your life is, the things people see around you, that is when they will know that something is wrong with this person. This person has an issue that has to be resolved. But physically, it's a normal life. I've seen people that commit adultery, they go to brutal, they go into serious aggressive sex, and it's not showing sex, it doesn't show for face. Some smoke, they drink, they are into drugs, it doesn't show. Actually, they are even more calmer on drugs because it's the trauma that came in from a dysfunctional home. If you understand the dynamics of this, it will help you to know as an individual that is struggling that, okay, I don't have to judge myself. I don't have to kill myself. Something went wrong. Something happened to me. That's why I am struggling with my sexuality. Now, coming to Isaac. Nobody would have thought anything happened to Isaac. At least Ishmael had gone, the mother has gone. The story of Ishmael, I'll talk about it some other time. You know, everything was fine. And even to the choice of marriage, Abraham had to tell everybody around. He said, go, don't get a wife for my son here. I want my child to be in the covenant. I'm carrying the covenant. He was too sure of what he was passing down. And of course, when you are dysfunctional, hear me, this lady, and we are doing question and answer, ask me any question. You can send me a DM, ask me any question about life. I will bring an answer to you. That's what I want to be doing. Answering, you see, imagine I've been answering just 1 or 2 questions for almost an hour now, which is extremely important for you to know where the struggle is. Now, if I get into therapy with this person that asked the question, I have to go to the root. I have to help him or her to bring out the wounds, the trauma, the pain. Is that you are opening up a wound and you are bringing out the pus. That is the only time the person will feel a little bit of rest and respite, or else nothing will happen. You can't, anything you cover will decay. I think I said it in one of my episodes. Now, coming back to Isaac. Now, Abraham had thought, oh, I've settled the case, everything is fine. The mother of Ishmael is gone with his, Hagar has gone with Ishmael. Nothing but emotional wounds was sitting there. It wasn't obvious. Nobody saw it. So even when he was going to get married, the servant of Abraham had to go to a land to get a wife for his master's son in Genesis 24. They saw Rebecca. You would have thought, oh, this boy is very functional. Excuse me, Isaac was not functional. Ishmael was not functional. When you are from a dysfunctional home, you are very, very dysfunctional. It could be monogamous home, it could be polygamous home, any home that is dysfunctional. Polygamous home is worst because they cover it under religion. They cover it under mommy and daddy wearing uniform to church or to mosque. Oh, we are together, mommy and Mr. and Mrs. My daddy and mommy, they are one. Stop deceiving yourself. The moment your emotional needs are not met, the moment there's something that is going on within the siblings, the moment there's a crisis in the home, the children becomes a victim of that crisis. Now let me go back to Isaac and Rebecca. Of course, Rebecca was a virgin. So being a virgin, being married as a virgin does not make you functional. You can see how delicate is this issue we're talking about. For the fact that you are from your dad and mom are together and you are still a virgin. I know we have a lot of technical virgins. We have girls that have not been physically disvirgined and they masturbate to stupor. So virginity does not mean you are emotionally healthy. Keeping yourself. Now, not only that Rebecca in Genesis 24 was a virgin, she was dynamic. She must have been a doctor, double doctor, PhD, masters, everything. I mean, the way she reacted at the well shows that she's very, very intelligent. She's very dynamic. She's very resourceful. She's very purposeful. Very intentionally woman. Because how can you see a stranger, can I have a drink? And not just having it. He said, don't worry, I'll give you drink and I'll feed your camels. And this man came with 13 camels. 3 camels came with it. And she said, don't worry, I'll feed you and feed your camels. That tells you how dynamic this girl is. But excuse me, Rebecca was from a dysfunctional home. Because the day of the wedding, the first thing that happened, when the man that came to take her hand in marriage came, and said, whose daughter are you? And they went home. And they asked Rebecca, they said, are you ready to be married? She said, I'm going to go now. Now, if your home is good, and your home is functional, and you are having peace in your marriage, in your home, as a young lady, as a young man, or let's leave men now, as a young lady, do you want to marry quickly like that? A lot of people jump into wrong marriages because of this, because of what I'm talking about. They just jump into marriage. They just want to leave that home. That home is sickening. It's giving them headache. So they quickly want to just go somewhere and just have a respite. And that was what happened to Rebecca. And listen to me carefully. We have 4 types of wrong fathers. I'm going to be talking about father's wound. I've written 64 books. One of them is Healing of the Father's Wound. And we do it when we do therapy in school and in the ministry. Now let me explain this to you. You want to give your daughter out in marriage, it was your brother. That's a shadow dad or a missing in action dad. Why would you want to give your daughter out in marriage and is your cousin or your niece or your brother? So the father of Rebecca is a wrong father. And when you are raised by wrong fathers, whether monogamy or polygamy, such father, they inflict wound in the soul of their children. I'm sure you were not seeing anything now, because finally, of course, uncle gave Rebecca out in marriage. The servant that brought the that brought the camels and the gifts and everything was happy, was excited. Oh, the God of my father has answered me. Lord, I'm grateful. They were happy and they got married. As a matter of fact, the moment Isaac saw Rebecca, he lighted from his eyes, love at first sight. They were fine, doing well. But something happened. When the two things, the first thing that happened is that the pattern of the bloodline of Abraham showed up. I told us, we need to understand, if you can't trace it, you can't face it. If you cannot face it, you cannot erase it. If you cannot erase it, you cannot replace it. That's why my nickname is trace it, face it, erase it, and start replacing it. If you don't know where you are coming from, forget the fact that you are born again. Please, can we just leave religion out of this and understand the dynamics of where we're coming from? Or else we just be struggling. And let me say this today. All the saints, now I'm focusing on believers now. Until the saints are restored, there will be no revival. We can have migration. And that's how saints migrate today. Let me use Lagos. I live in Ibadan. So let me use Lagos-Ibadan Expressway as my explanation. When people are, as believers, they go to redemption camp, they move to Mountain of Fire. There's one religion, there's a Nafsat, Muslim place. You don't know how many people will go there, like Nicodemus. Then they move to deeper life and move to Canaan land. And that's why I ask a lot of questions. If the level of churches we have in the world, especially in this our Nigeria, if all the churches are so impactful and so powerful, honestly, we won't have anybody that will go to church and blast the church with bomb. We won't have them. We won't have kidnappers. Nobody will just look at someone, go into the ATM and just blow the person with gun and take the money and kill the person like that. The effect of the church is not shown, is not seen in our generation, because saints are wounded. They are loaded, but they are wounded. Until the saints are restored, there will be no revival. We need to understand that this struggle is beyond, tradition, religion. Somebody is just talking. No, facts. Now, what happened to Isaac and Rebecca? They were looking for the fruit of the womb, like Daddy Abraham too. And you know what happened? They were struggling. They were praying and fasting. So Isaac sought the Lord, and God told the wife. Now you could see that they are not working as a team. There's this gulf between the two of them. If you look at it very well, okay, we both went to pray. Myself and my husband, we went to pray. Now the answer came to me that there are 2 nations in my womb. Good word, good sure word. And they got pregnant as God has promised. And they had 2 nations in their womb. You know the story. Let me remind you. If I don't finish this question today, I'll continue next week. Tuesday as promised. Now guess what happened? That's really painful. They gave birth to 2 boys. And guess what? The boys in that family, they became PDP 1, PDP 2, 2 parties in a home. One was mommy's favorite, the other one was daddy's favorite. Why? Ask yourself why. What happened to Ishmael and Isaac? What happened to Rebecca and her family? I'm talking about inlet to struggles, pattern of the family. You have to trace it to face it, erase it to replace it, and start trace it, face it, erase it, and start replacing it. Everyone at the sound of my voice today, you're listening to me now, you're going to listen to me later. You have to be intentional about your recovery. You have to be deliberate about the things you are not going to permit in your life. Not because you are more religious or you are more godly. You just look at where you are coming from. You stop it in your children. You stop it everywhere. The more you can stop it, the more you should stop it. Because listen to me, it's going to peg you, it's going to stop you, it's going to hamper your progress, it's going to limit you. These are limiting powers and forces from the bloodline. Now let's go back to Rebecca and Isaac. Isaac was getting old and he needed to bless one of his sons, and he called his first son. He said, Esau, come. I'm going to bless you. And the woman is dropped. So where is communication? What is happening in that marriage? There was no communication. They have fractions in that home. Why? The pattern of the bloodline. And you know the story. The mother had to swap the destiny of his son to an extent that when Esau came back, he wept, he could not handle it. And you could see that the conflict is still here till eternity. Esau had to choose a pattern of religion that grieves the heart of the mother. So went away from the covenant because of the setup, the pattern of the bloodline. So when we are dealing with issues like this, we should not be casual about it. We should be deliberate and be intentional, prayerful, doing therapy, getting to talk to someone, healing of these wounds, so that at least, do you know all the children of Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob? Look at what Jacob did now. Jacob, no. The two nations, oh my God, there's no time. The two nations is a nation. Great man. Because he took his brother's birthright, he ran away. The first point of running away, I'm talking about the pattern of the bloodline. The first point of running away, he saw a woman that helped him. And he said, and the father-in-law said, the father of the woman, you know the story, Leah and Rachel, said, no, you can't marry here until you serve for 7 years. And he wasted 7 years of his life because of woman. Are you thinking with me? Do you understand what I'm saying? If you cannot trace it, you can't face it. Check where you are coming from. Check your parents. Check your background. Look at your children. If you see any traces of where those things are coming from, kill it as if you are cutting off cancer. Because it's going to show. It will show. You don't know what birth means to this. It's pain. I understand the dynamics of this as I understand my name and know that I'm saved. And guess what happened? Sad story. 7 years of your life wasted. And excuse me, the night of the wedding, a lady you courted for 7 years, dated or courted for 7 years, the night of the wedding, they brought another person, they brought Leah to you, and you slept with that girl. 7 years relationship. That's a problem of the bloodline. That's a pattern that has to be seen. And not only that, after that one, the father-in-law now said no. He said no. Isaac said, sorry, Jacob said no. I still love Rachel. She's the one I love. She's the one I work for. The father-in-law said, well, it's not a problem. The life pattern of the bloodline just push Jacob to polygamy like that. Now, Isaac did not do polygamy. Can you see the trend? What happened to Isaac was trauma, separation, no communication. They were living in the same house as tenants. But for Jacob, straight to polygamy. And the father-in-law says 7 years. More 7 years. 14 years of your life. When others are making progress. You are struggling with pornography. You are struggling with masturbation. Your wife has caught you several times with all sorts of things. All sorts. Under 7 years of marriage. You need to check where you're coming from. If you enjoyed this evening, let me see a wave. Let me see a wave. Thank you. I think I spoke my heart this evening. He that has ears, let him hear. This is deep. Because if you don't deal with it, you are just going to be dancing to a music you don't know is playing the rhythm. A lot of people are dancing different lyrics, jumping and dancing. They don't know what's going on. And the thank you. The painful part of it is, it's not only you that will be inflicted with the struggle, your children. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's your children again, your children's children. People that are supposed to produce and show, and for you to see the travail of your soul. They are into problem. They will enter into it. Look at all the children that Leah had and Rachel had. Just everything was just messed up. When the father was blessing them, he was cursing, was blessing, because of the pattern of the bloodline. So I've told us today, because of my time, I have 1 minute to go. One inlet is wrong exposure to sex. The second inlet is trauma based. I've showed you trauma in Abraham, I've showed you trauma in Isaac, and I've told you trauma in Jacob. Then of course, family line. So if your parents are into any form of sexual issues, whether it's a fling, or you saw the woman, or you have stepsisters and stepbrothers that you don't know, just know that you are a bait for sexual struggle. Wow, I want to say a very big thank you to everyone listening to me this evening. It's been a time of refreshing. I felt refreshed actually talking to us, and I appreciate you dearly. Next week I'll take another question. Probably I'll just round this off. If I have to say 1 or 2 things on that, then we'll go into another question. Like I said, I have over 4,000 questions that I want to be answering, apart from the ones you are going to be sending to me. Please, you are free to ask me any question, and I'm available for you to be helped. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.